What? Sidney Powell now is 100% guaranteed snitch. She has to testify at everybody's trial, including DJT. She's a fucking snitch.
Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. Who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And who is he? Bruce Rivers, he's the criminal lawyer. And what he do? And it's gonna react to all the self-snitching.
Hi, this is Bruce Rivers. Welcome to another fun-filled episode of Criminal Lawyer Reacts. I am Bruce Rivers, your personal board-certified criminal defense lawyer, board-certified by the National Board of Trial and Advocacy and the Minnesota State Bar Association as a criminal trial specialist. And today I am joined with our content genius at the camera, Michael Rivers, and we are reacting to the news that Sidney Powell, attorney and disgraced lawyer, has pled guilty in court in Georgia. But before we get to that, this is brought to you by eSign.com. eSign.com, a very effective way to remotely do business. Let's say you're trying to influence an election, say in a neighboring state of Georgia, like Alabama, because everybody in Alabama is liberal and you wanted to flip it the other way. And so what you do is, you send out all these documents and you want to get all these signatures for your petition. Well, you get them e-signed. E-sign is a very effective way to remotely sign a document. It can be any document. It could be, a petition to overthrow an election. It could be a power of attorney. It could be any kind of document. I'd use it all the time in my practice when somebody can't make it in the office, or I need a medical release, or any kind of document you need. And here's the other thing. It's the kind of thing that can actually keep a business deal done quickly. If it's not e-sign, no one signs. Today we're reacting to the news that Sidney Powell has now pled guilty. And I think this makes sense. She's on the eve of trial, right? A lot of times deals get done on the eve of trial because all of a sudden they see this freight train coming after them. And so we're gonna watch the court proceedings. I'm gonna explain to you, number one, what this plea means, what the conditions of her plea are, and what would the implications be if she were not to comply with those conditions. She is such a freaking tool, by the way. And I hate to say that about a fellow lawyer, but she's gone all over this country on very frivolous lawsuits. And every single one of them has been thrown out. Let's just kind of see what happens in court here.
All right, Ms. Powell, I just have a few questions for you. Do you understand the nature of the charges that have been reaccused and that you would be pleading guilty to today?
So the first thing you do in any plea is you waive your rights, because you have a right to a trial. At a trial, you're presumed innocent until proven guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. You have the right to cross-examine any witnesses. That's your Sixth Amendment right to confrontation. You also have the right to present a defense and bring witnesses you think would be favorable to appear and testify on your behalf in court. And you have the right to testify or remain silent. And if you chose to remain silent, nobody can hold that against you. So those are the trial rights that you're waiving. Whenever you do a plea, you have to waive those rights.
Understood.
And you've heard all the rights that the state has gone through that you would waive by going forward with this plea. Do you still wish to waive those rights?
I do.
And are you pleading guilty today because you agree that there is a sufficient factual basis, that there are enough facts that support this plea of guilty?
So the other part of a plea is called a factual basis. And what a factual basis is, the judge can't take a plea from anybody who claims to be innocent, right? And so a factual basis, there have to be underlying facts that you agree with to support a guilty verdict, or, to support the guilt.
I do.
Mr. Rafferty, are you satisfied your client is competent in understanding that the plea is voluntary and that there is a sufficient factual basis for entering this plea?
Yes, Your Honor.
I agree and find that there is a sufficient factual basis, and I find this plea of guilty to be knowingly, voluntarily, and intelligently entered.
So the plea has to be knowingly and intelligently. It can't be coerced. It can't be done when you're under the influence of drugs or alcohol. It has to be a very knowing and voluntary plea.
There's been a request that this sentence be entered under the First Offender Act.
Okay, First Offender Act. So we're going to break all this down. First Offender Act is a program in Georgia for first-time offenders when you don't have a felony record, sort of a diversion program so you can keep a felony off your record. Now listen to what else he says.
And the court will approve that request to withhold adjudication.
Withhold adjudication. That means no finding of, even though you're admitting to the facts of this case, even though you're saying that there's enough facts to find you guilty, the court's withholding adjudication. That means they're not going to enter that guilty finding as long as you comply with the conditions of the sentence. Now listen to what the sentence is going to be and the conditions of the sentence.
But I must notify you, Ms. Powell, that you're not allowed to withdraw your plea simply because you do not comply with the terms of the sentence.
So let's say she gets down the road and says, fuck this, I don't want to do this. Well, now that's called buyer's remorse, which I think is going to happen in this case down the road, to be honest with you. Well, I'll get into that in a second. But you can't later withdraw your plea if all of a sudden you're just unhappy with the deal later.
And the terms of that sentence would be as recommended by the parties.
Listen to this.
On count 1, conspiracy to commit intentional interference with the performance of election duties, the sentence would be 12 months probation. And counts 2 through 6 would also be 12 months probation consecutive to each other and to count 1 for a total term of essentially 6 years probation, but we're going to translate that into months for the sentence sheet. Special conditions would include a $6,000 fine with $1,000.
6 times 12 is what? 72 months? 72 months probation. So she's going to be on probation for 6 freaking years. And if she violates that, I don't think it contemplates any jail time. But on each one of these counts, she could get jail time if she doesn't comply with the terms and conditions of her probation.
$1,000 for each count. Restitution to be paid in the amount of $2,700 to the Georgia Secretary of State's office. You are to have written a letter, which you've already satisfied. You're also to provide a recorded proffer with the state, which you've already satisfied.
So you're supposed to provide a recorded proffer with the state. What does that mean? That means she's got to sit down with the state and tell her everything, or tell the state everything. So she needs to sit down and say what happened, when it happened, who was involved, and everything that she knows. So in other words, she needs to snitch.
You're to testify truthfully against any and all co-defendants in this matter at any.
What? Sidney Powell now is 100% guaranteed snitch. She has to testify at everybody's trial, including DJT, Donald J. Trump. So she's a fucking snitch. Sidney Powell has struck a deal to keep this off her record and to stay out of prison the day before trial in exchange for her cooperation. She's a snitch. Don't think that for 1 minute that Donald Trump isn't aware of what's going on in Sidney Powell's case. I bet he rused the day that he brought her into his circle.
Upcoming proceedings. You are not to have any communication with any witness.
So if she starts talking to his team, guess what? That violates conditions of her deal. Then she can't fucking withdraw, and all of a sudden she's looking at prison time.
Any co-defendant or any member of the media concerning the facts or circumstances of this case.
So, I mean, they got some pretty tight restrictions on her.
And you to provide all documents to the district attorney's office as requested and relevant to this case. Again, Ms. Young, I would ask if you could provide the state's recitation of the exact phrasing of these, and we'll make sure that's reflected in the final disposition form. In order to make this sentence consistent with Mr. Hall, I do believe it would be appropriate, and I'm willing to include the language involving moral turpitude, although that language being included on the sentence form may not ultimately have any effect on the entities responsible for actually determining that. Are there any other express conditions and special conditions, Ms. Young, that you would like to see reflected on this sentence?
I think you covered it, Your Honor.
Okay. Mr. Rafferty.
So the long and short of it is, we'll keep this off your record. You're going to be on probation for 5 years. You need to turn over any documents you have. You need to cooperate with a proffer, and you need to testify at any co-defendant's hearing in the future. That means that when DJT has his trial, she needs to testify against him.
Mr. Rafferty, is there anything else that you think needs to be on the record today? Ms. Young, do the state have an announcement regarding the indictment in this case?
Yes, Your Honor, the state will be entering an all-pros order on indictment number 23 SC 188947 as it applies to Ms. Powell.
So a non-pros order, that means non-prosecution. That means they're going to dismiss the indictment upon entry of this plea.
All right, well, upon being provided a copy of that motion, I will sign it and the charges in the indictment will be dismissed. All right, if there's nothing else, then we will conclude this and be off the record. Good luck.
So that is absolutely huge. Huge news. Because now let's just talk a little bit about what Trump is doing. Trump's in his trial in New York. And in that case, there's an appraiser that was listed in some of the documents who said he never authorized any of those appraisals and never authored any of those appraisals. So that's a total fraud that's trying to be proven by the Attorney General of New York. So he's got that thing going. He's got the Mar-a-Lago documents case. He's got the January 6th election interference case federally and here in Georgia. And then he's also got, don't forget the Manhattan business fraud case that's also criminal. He's got 91 counts against him. The case against Donald Trump in Georgia just got a whole heck of a lot stronger. And here's what you're going to see coming out of Georgia. You're going to see a lot of opposition to Sidney Powell. You're going to hear a lot of people talk about what a piece of crap she is, how she's a liar, how she, they're going to try to just absolutely destroy her credibility. You watch. Remember, there's 2 gag orders. There's one in New York in the fraud trial, and basically the judge was just basically saying, don't talk about my fucking staff. That's really what that was about. Because he put the clerk's information on social media, and you don't do that. You just don't do that. And then the DC judge also put a gag order on him, a limited one, but still, nonetheless. I would not be shocked to all of a sudden hear Trump start to talk about, well, I don't really know Sidney Powell. What I understand is she was a terrible lawyer. What I understand is, she's a liar, and but I don't really know her. That's just what I know. But I mean, everybody knows she's lying, and everybody knows she just took a deal to save her skin, and she's a snitch, and you're going to hear that kind of stuff coming from Trump. I guarantee it. I guarantee it. And so when you start seeing the news programs and Trump people getting on there and start talking about this case, which they shouldn't be doing, they're going to just start pissing all over Sidney Powell hard. As things start to progress, this is the second plea in this case. So out of 19 people, you've got 2 that have already pled. They're going to start dropping like flies, especially since now she's got a cooperation agreement with the government. The case against Donald Trump and his co-defendants in the Georgia case just got a lot stronger. And keep in mind, you can say she's a liar all you want, but if she lies in order to secure a prosecution, that's not going to help her either. I mean, probably part of the agreement she has is to tell the truth. We'll keep following this, and this was just huge news that Sidney Powell pled guilty in the Georgia 2020 election case. Keep tuning into us because we have a lot more great stuff coming up. And here's the other thing. We are in the process of figuring out our podcast and our live stream. You're going to see a lot new content coming out because our content genius is just that. He's a genius. I can't keep up with him. So just continue to follow us on Instagram, follow us on Twitter, subscribe, and sign up for Patreon, and we'll see you next time here on Criminal Lawyer Reacts.
Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. Bruce Rivers just broke down your case. He know all the charges that you about to face. You ain't coming home till 2058. That self-snitching gon' get you put away. 23-hour lockdown, please, is that my God?